Welcome to the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast, a podcast for those with chronic illness, chronic pain, and for those that love and support us. I'm Meg Quinlist, your host. After 45 years of living with debilitating rheumatoid arthritis and having had over 45 surgeries, I have learned a thing or two. Chronic pain can be a lonely existence. It can leave us feeling alienated and disconnected from others. So just know that this is a safe space. We are going to share our wisdom and our woes. We're going to offer support and advice so that we thrive. Today's guest on the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast is Kelly Kean. She's going to share some interesting information with us about pudendal neuropathy. There are 10 things I want you to listen for, 10 insights into this episode. Number 1, what is pudendal neuropathy? I've never heard of it until Kelly talked to me about it. 2, what are some successful surgical and medication options for those suffering from pudendal neuropathy? Number 3, some successful alternative treatment options and coping skills. Number 4, the importance of a pain clinic, a cognitive behavioral therapy, and pain support groups. Number 5 is the newest research and treatments for nerve pain. Number 6 is redefining success in your life. Number 7, the impact her pain has on her family and friends. The struggle and the balancing act of asking for help. Number 8, what not to say to Kelly regarding her pain. And number 9, what keeps Kelly motivated. And last but not least is what advice does she wish someone had given her when she was first diagnosed. Well, stay tuned and get to know a little bit more about Kelly. Kelly's our guest today. Kelly grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania. She's a large Catholic family. She was number 5 out of 7 siblings. Her mother and father were both attractive, tall, athletic, and glamorous. Her mother, by the way, was a fabulous dancer, I heard. I also grew up in Westchester during the 70s, and I definitely knew the Arnold family. I am now still friends with her youngest sibling, Mary, and we've been friends since first grade. Like most small towns in America, there were families that people just knew. They stood out from the rest. They had that certain sparkle and that certain shine. They were known as the It family. They're popular, they're charismatic, they're influential. Well, let me tell you, Kelly's family, the Arnolds, were that It family in Westchester. If you lived in Westchester during the 70s and you were Catholic, you knew the Arnold family. They were pretty amazing. They had a 7-bedroom house in a gorgeous part of town. They spent summers at the Jersey Shore. They threw lavish, crazy, over-the-top fun parties. They were involved in the Catholic Church and the Catholic school. When I was growing up, I so wanted to be part of that world. I wanted to be an Arnold. Now, every child has a role in every family, and Kelly was no exception. She was the tomboy. She was the star athlete, both in grade school and in high school. There wasn't a sport that she didn't excel at. She was the best in field hockey. She was all-state. She was MVP in swimming and softball. Kelly definitely was a coach's dream. I mean, she had talent, she had speed, she was competitive as hell, and she was extremely hardworking. She had a burning desire to be the very best, and she had enough talent to be the very best. Well, Kelly ended up going to Westchester University and to Widener University, and she ended up playing field hockey and lacrosse. After several years, she got her nursing degree and became a nurse practitioner in 2000. Life goes on, has 2 beautiful kids, a boy and a girl. She also now has 3 lovely grandkids, which are the highlight of her life. One of the primary things about Kelly is she's always been an athlete, and moving and controlling her body was so much a part of her and was so essential to who she was that she even became a spin instructor and would lead long bike rides, 100-mile bike rides. I can't imagine anybody doing them, but she did all that. I asked Kelly how would her children, her friends, and casual acquaintances describe her, and she said they would all have a similar description, which is primarily that she's creative and she is funny as hell. She's empathetic and compassionate, and she is the best hostess. She really makes others feel comfortable and welcome. She's loving, generous, and has strong family connections. Well, suddenly though, in 2010, her whole body was hijacked by a debilitating pain. Kelly has pudendal neuropathy. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Meg.
What is the
Okay.
cause of your chronic pain, Kelly?
So I like to start with a diagnosis just so people
Yes.
hear the word. So I have pudendal neuropathy, and neuropathy is nerve damage. And there's different versions, mild, moderate, severe. And the pudendal nerve actually comes off the sacral spine. So the sacral spine, most people know about their lumbar spine. If they have pain, it's 90% is usually in the lumbar spine. So
Yeah.
sacral is below that, and the nerves
Okay.
that come off that feed the pelvic bowl. And the pelvic bowl is anything that's covered under a bikini. In
Sure.
men, it would be a pair of boxers, perhaps. So that includes the vagina, the clitoris, the anus, and the perineum that goes in between. So all of those nerve roots, if you
Wow.
think of a compression or a tunneling, like carpal tunnel in the wrist,
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Mine happens to be from the sacral spine and it wraps around my hips and feeds that whole pelvic bowl. So the sensation, to give people an idea, is like someone has clobbered me with a baseball bat on my
Jeez.
buttocks, the whole sacral spine, and all of that area. And there's many different sensations that come along with that.
Now, this is really hard to talk about and to listen to because, for so many reasons, first of all, the pain aspect of it, and also from where the pain is, your sexual parts that we don't talk about as a society. And I think it speaks volumes about our society and about how we have been raised
Yes.
to suppress any sexual feelings, any discussions around sexuality, the anatomical parts. And those parts to me are so private and they're all about your vulnerability. And I
Yes.
thought, imagine how difficult it must be for someone like you who has to, first of all, experience that and then has to talk about that to somebody else that you may know may not be comfortable. And even a professional like a doctor, that is the most exposed I think you could be in a medical
Absolutely.
setting and a friendly setting. God, it was so personal and it made me feel so protective. And I thought it's all about empowerment and it's all about as women, we don't feel empowered in our sexuality. I mean, there's so many times when, especially as a Catholic, and all the guilt that we have
Mm,
been building over the years. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit and just say,
sure.
does that make sense to you? Why maybe I was feeling that way as I was, listening to or talking with you last time?
Absolutely, Meg. I think that because we are women who we are at this age, and I think maybe future generations will not be feeling
Hope.
this same overwhelming feeling. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of what we're doing today is educating others and helping them understand.
Yes.
Just a little side note, if I will, I
Yes.
did go to nursing school and then I went back for my nurse practitioner. And so I ended up in women's health. And so I had a little bit of some knowledge.
You did. That must have helped a
Yes,
lot. Yeah.
I think so. But the training when we were showing women and doing their pap smears, et cetera, was we were trained to say, let them hold the mirror and let them do an exam. And I will tell you, 9 out of 10 women did not want to hold the mirror,
Wow.
were very uncomfortable even trying to get to know their own anatomy. It's just something that is down there. And my hope is that future generations, my grandchildren, will not be that way. And I believe that they won't be. I
Yeah.
think that a shift has occurred, which is great.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
It's long overdue. There's so much tied up in acts and feelings that
Yes.
we have around our bodies. This is extremely important because of the area where it's at and because
Yes.
of how comfortable you are talking about it. You therefore lead other people to feel comfortable asking questions about it and listening
Oh,
to
well,
it.
that's good feedback.
So thank you,
Okay.
Kelly. Yeah. When you say a baseball bat hitting you, is that when you're in a state of a flare up, or is that as you're sitting there right now, Kelly? Is that what you're feeling?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so you right now you're feeling as if someone is hitting you with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like
how
it's
are you
a
not screaming? I thought that is intense pain. And if that is your normal, I can't imagine when you get up to a 10, like what
right.
that's got to be insanity. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I
You
didn't.
stun me. You stun me to silence.
Yeah, I know, but I'm really good at that. Jeez. I mean that I'm shocked.
It feels for me like I'm sitting. So right now I'm leaning over to one side because it's very difficult for me. Everyone typically knows what the sits bones are, and they're the
Yes.
bones that help you sit up. I cannot sit on those because both of the
Jeez.
nerves are so compressed. So I never sit on my sits bones by myself. So right now I'm leaning to one side, or if I have to sit, then I sit on we call it a tush cush. And
Love
it's
that.
almost like someone that would have had a hemorrhoid surgery or
Baby.
something of
Yeah.
that, a baby, anything where you can't have that pressure.
Right.
So I have 8 different cushions, and most of them have a little triangle or a circle cut out so that you have that area to not be compressed.
Thank God there
One
is
of
that.
the,
Yeah.
yes,
Sure.
and I don't want to go too much into the medical, Meg, but
Yeah.
one of the diagnostic signs, if OBGYNs ask their female patients, do you feel better when you sit on a toilet seat?
Oh, that,
And that's a sign that they may potentially have pudendal neuralgia.
God, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah, because
Uh,
the pressure is not there, pushing back up against your sits bones and compressing the nerves.
Wow. Okay. So give me a little bit about how you were diagnosed, because I know it's not an easy thing necessarily to diagnose. It could be several different things.
So, when we talked earlier about athleticism and things like that, and I was an active cyclist, and this is also known as cyclist syndrome. There's a few different versions, but most people have heard of cyclist syndrome. So, spinning classes or being out on the road.
Oh, yeah.
So I was very active with that. I taught 3 classes a week, and one of them was a double class. So it's over an hour and a half sitting on a bike. Back in 2003, I had a very difficult time with symptoms, and my right hip was killing me. I was dragging my right leg behind me, and they said,
Oh,
Kelly, you must get off the bike. Chiropractic, PT, and my primary said, time to take a break from the bike.
jeez.
You can walk and do yoga. So
Right.
I walked and I said, this is personality's not doing yoga.
Yeah,
But
this is not,
so it
yeah.
took me a few months and I'm like, maybe I'll try yoga. So I ended up taking yoga and that became a life-changing event for me. I remember a teardrop, Meg, just
Oh,
dropping on the yoga mat during my first Savasana. And I had no idea what just happened to me. And I'm like, I can do this. So I became a yoga instructor.
now, can I ask you a question about that? You were
Yes,
emotional because you found you found a new love. Is that why you were emotional? Something you could do and you liked it?
I liked it, but it also something happened to my body where I melted into the yoga mat and I had never in high competitive sports. You
Yeah,
don't
total.
have your little letdown while you're still on the field.
That's true.
Yeah. So for me, that was
Huh.
a big shift and I loved that
Life
feeling.
changing. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, I came home. It was
Ah,
that feeling
okay.
of, yeah, in my
Yeah.
body. So that was absolutely great.
Yeah, awesome.
So, over a few more years, I started working about an hour away from home, and I'm working as a nurse practitioner. And I had to drive an hour, and I was working 4 10-hour days, and I sat a lot. I was on the computer, I
Mm,
was seeing patients, but sitting with patients. So, it was a lot of sitting, and I went numb from my
oh,
belly
God.
button and my back down to the top part of my knees. I couldn't feel
Jeez.
anything, and
That
I
must have
would feel
scared the
better.
hell out of you. Did
It
that
did
scare the
scare me.
Yeah.
Yes. I had to lay on
Jeez.
the floor and I kept laying on the floor and it would feel better if I laid on the floor,
Completely flat, like on your back or on your side?
flat and in the fetal position. Or if I laid on my back, I'd have to bring my knees up. Or this was the weird thing when my coworkers saw me laying on the floor with my legs up the wall.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
the only thing that took the pressure off for me. So they're like, Kelly, you better. I'm in a medical environment. So they're
Yes.
like, you better get an MRI, make sure you don't have
Yeah.
spinal stenosis. And so
Yeah.
all of that, it was anything that we had all heard of in the past. So I went
Yeah.
down a few different roads, OBGYN. I was in the Bahamas actually on a vacation and in the water a lot. And this was back in 2010.
Yeah.
And a classic sign of pudendal neuralgia is almost like you have a foreign object sticking out of your vagina. So they
Oh,
say like a sensation of a tampon
oh
sticking
God,
out of your vagina. So
that's not a good feeling.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, like perineum. I always feel like I'm sitting on a golf ball at
Oh,
all
geez.
times, or I have
Oh,
a sensation, but it goes to the size of a grapefruit. So I was experiencing all of this, and my OBGYN thought I had something like a Bartholinian cyst. She took me to the OR. She said, you don't have a Bartholinian cyst.
right.
I biopsied it, blah, blah, blah. It was the very
Again,
first
very
time.
scary because you're thinking
Scary.
cyst. What if it's a tumorous type of thing? What if it's yeah,
Yes.
that's very frightening. Yeah.
So then they found it was a fibroid, which most OBGYNs never see a fibroid outside of the uterus. So I had one
Yeah.
on my labia. And my labia, only because you said this earlier, you didn't
Yeah.
know you had two,
I know.
the
I do
major and
know.
the minor.
Yes.
Now
Right.
you know.
Now I
Well,
know.
my labia fused together on one side. So it was this chronic inflammation and tension on the pelvic floor that I didn't know anything about. They told me it looked like I had two different vaginas. Again, it goes scary in a
Very
patient's mind. I'm
scary.
like, what do you mean I have two vaginas? Like
Oh my
all
God. Yeah. Oh my
so
gosh.
symptoms persevered. They sent me to a couple different practices. They sent me to New York City to hospital for special surgery. And I had a very specific MRI there that
Okay.
showed my diagnosis. And then I
Okay.
had to have an EMG, which is what they
The
do
t-
for your leg pain. But
is that with the needles and the that
yes.
is the most painful, unfun thing to do. I've had it done probably about 10 different times
Oh, you
when they're
have.
testing on all of my arms to test how the nerves are being pinched or damaged by the arthritis. So
Right.
I know what that's
Right.
like, and you're ready to scream the whole time. You had it in the
I
vaginal area.
did.
Holy
So they
God, I
had to
can't
do
imagine.
the clitoris, the vagina, and the anus. And I know my body jumped this high off of the table. And
My
whenever
God.
they wanted to do another one a few years later, I
No.
adamantly refused. I
Yeah.
said, this is barbaric.
What's the point? It is. Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
is an issue. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, that is really, you feel like you're sexually violated. Yeah.
So I met an OBGYN who did that EMG and then said, Kelly, you're a perfect candidate. You've already had this for quite a few years. You never really knew what it was.
Right.
You're a candidate to have a decompression surgery. So that was 2010 when I started with this foreign body sensations. 2011, it took about a year and a half to get the diagnostics and figure out what's going on. So I did have a surgical procedure where they decompress the nerve.
Okay.
They hope that you get 20 to 50% better,
Oh,
not
that would be
100% better,
great.
but
Yeah.
20 to 50%. So I did get about 20% better.
Oh,
And he said, if you want to get to 50%, Kelly, I want you to go to physical therapy. And the best ones are in San Francisco. So, you know where my sister lives.
yes. What a gift
And
she is. Yeah.
yes. And he said,
Yeah.
can you go there? And I said, in
Yes.
fact, I can. So I went for 2 months and stayed with my sister Mary. And
Oh, nice.
but I didn't really get that much better. So it is a chronic, this leads to the chronic pain syndrome
Yeah.
that occurs. And so I did a lot of the other modalities and heavy duty
Yeah.
medications.
When you got back or when you were there in San Francisco getting additional therapy, and after it wasn't working, were your feelings of hopelessness overwhelming? I mean, yes, you had 20% improvement, but it doesn't seem like that'd be near enough improvement. It
Right.
must have been really difficult. Really
Yeah.
difficult.
And we put pressure on ourselves to, I wanted to be better. And I,
Yeah.
not fake it till you make it, but I
Yeah.
was my own cheerleader for such a long time. And I said, I can do this. I know I'm going to get
Well,
better. I know
that's
I'm
your
going to get better.
personality too. You're an
It
athlete, you're a
is
type A personality. So anything you're going to do at 200%, which
correct.
is a gift, but also probably your biggest curse as well,
It's a
because
it is a curse.
it's
Yes,
both of
it
those
is.
things. Yeah. Jeez.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about now chronic pain is a complex and it's a complicated condition that involves so much of your mind and your body. People do
Yes.
assume that chronic pain is just a physical thing and that it just
Mm.
stops there, that it doesn't spread to everywhere and every single part of you, and it doesn't change every single part of you. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it changes you biologically, hormonally, and physically, and we've touched on some of those, but is there anything else that you want to specifically talk about? Maybe even the mental piece, because I think that was the biggest surprise for me is mentally how much my chronic illness affected me and continues to affect me on a daily, sometimes a minute by minute basis, even more so sometimes
Yes,
than the physical.
absolutely. And I think our minds can, at least for me, play tricks with you. And I think that's what I meant. Like I can be my own cheerleader for a little bit. So you
Yeah.
have a little bit of that anxiety of how am I going to produce? How am I going
Yes.
to still be a professional? How am I going to provide? How am I going to get a paycheck? And so you
Yeah.
have um, that propulsion to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And then you have some of the low energy because you know that you just had the wind knocked out of you and I can't get
Yeah.
out of bed for days at a time. And any little flare keeps you
You pay for it.
down,
Yeah.
keeps you down. Yes.
Does.
So mentally, it's been, for me, it's a roller coaster between the anxiety and some very low feelings
Yeah.
and frustration and feeling lonely and misunderstood.
Absolutely. People not being able to understand because they haven't
Hmm.
lived in that with that type of pain for that long a period of time. And
Right.
I know myself, I get really sick of my own story and I get sick of myself. Like, I don't want to be around myself. So some of
Right.
that bleeds into how's my family standing this? How's my
Right.
husband, Frank, standing it? So a lot of times I just shut down because I'm sick of it. I don't want to talk about it. And I'm also sick of if they don't give me the right answer, which isn't fair to them, which
Correct.
really isn't fair. And I know when I was first diagnosed, and for years, I expected when I was going to tell people I had rheumatoid arthritis, they were going to, oh my gosh, Meg, and they were going to say the exact things I wanted them to say. And the more I told people, the less I got that affirmation and that validation. And then the harder it was to tell people. So it became this cycle of having an expectation, people not meeting the expectation because I didn't share the
Yes.
expectation with them, and then
Yes.
somehow putting it back on me and then being angry at them. So it's this never ending back and forth, and you're on this wheel and you're just go, 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 go. And then suddenly you're like, oh God, I just want to go crawl up in a ball and hide in the closet and suck my thumb.
Exactly. And the quote that you said at the very beginning, which resonated the most with me out of what you just said, was, I'm so sick of myself. Like I
Yes.
still even I say that to my partner Andrew now. I say it
Yeah,
to my adult children.
me
Like,
too.
I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah, I
I
know.
just, yes, that whole cycle
Yes.
of
Yeah.
please try to understand without me saying it, or
Yes.
something along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And just I've had to teach my husband how to I want him to respond. And I've had to say, sometimes when he doesn't, I'll say, this is what I need you to say right now. It's kind of like he has to follow a bit of a script. And I know it seems cheesy, but I just need to have him say the right words. And he's such a wonderful person that if I give him the right words, he
Right.
will mean them. He just doesn't know
Yes.
what the right words are. Poor guy. Poor guy. Just can't. But um,
But
yeah,
it's wonderful that you've taken that step even, Meg, because I think some people that are new at this don't know how to, and they go into the closet and they cry, or they get in the
yes.
fetal position in bed. I've done the same
Oh, yeah.
exact strategy with not great results.
Yes.
There's no
Yeah.
good results from that, except we feel more sorry for ourselves.
And we get more angry at that person and we feel
Yes.
separated from that person and we feel justified in our pity and our solitary
Behavior.
behavior, exactly. And
Hmm.
that doesn't do anybody good. So I have had to, especially in the beginning when he would always try to give me answers to fix it, and have you thought of this, have you thought of that, I said, I need you to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that, Meg. Is there anything I can do to help you? And how about a hug? And that's as
Oh,
simple as it is. And now he just says it right away, and he's really good at it. And God bless him, he says it with feeling every time. It's not like,
oh,
well,
that's
I'm
good.
so sorry, Meg. Sorry you feel this way. I mean, he says it and he means it. So it
Yeah.
is helpful.
Sincerely. Sincerely.
Sincerely, I think one thing I did want to bring up about this too. I know we talked a little bit about being Catholic, and because of where the pain is,
Yes.
that has to really do a number on your head, because as Catholics, there were so many things that were not even talked about. I mean, sex education was not even a topic in school until we got to high school and it was taught by a priest
Exactly.
during this. I thought about that as being a person who was growing up Catholic. Now, of course, you are a nurse, but I don't think we get away sometimes from the childhood lessons or the childhood trauma that we have and the things that are taught to us,
I
when
would
you're young.
agree. I would
Yeah,
agree. We carry that in our bodies. There's
we
no
do.
question about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
we really do. And that whole vulnerable part too, because again, that is probably the most vulnerable part of our entire bodies, especially being women,
Yes.
and being a Catholic, that even makes it more like, ooh, not okay to talk about it, not okay to look at, not okay to explore or anything like that. I can just relate to that completely. That really hit me.
Mm.
So the next question is, medical treatments have been successful. You did mention some of them, and you did mention some of
Yes.
those in
Sure.
relieving some of your pain. Can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hmm.
So I've had many nerve blocks. In fact, one of the diagnostic tools is to inject one of the nerves in that area, the pudendal
Yeah.
nerve. And I know I shared with you earlier, but my daughter took off a day out of work from Boston and came up and took me to Dartmouth Hitchcock, which is about a 3 hour drive from
Wow.
Boston.
Yeah.
And she was amazed because I had absolutely no pain from the diagnostic block. And that sort of confirmed my diagnosis. But I didn't know it at the
Which
time.
is,
And my
it makes
daughter's like, Mom,
sense.
it makes
Yeah.
sense. And here's what my daughter said to me, who loves me.
Right.
And she's like, Mom, are you sure? Like, this is even a thing? Like, you seem better than you've ever been.
My
And I
gosh.
didn't
Yeah.
know at the time it was a diagnostic tool. I just thought, I don't have any pain. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
This is
In
wild.
24 to 48 hours, it was back with a vengeance. So, nerve blocks are really helpful. Injections, medications, of course. And back when I first started, Meg, I followed that train. This is in the 2000s and teens, that I took opioids because the pain was so severe
I
and
can
I got
imagine.
caught up in all of that, which
Did you?
today, if I take one a year,
Yeah.
because I won't allow myself to go
Yeah.
there.
I
Yeah.
that's I had a period where I was addicted to Demerol. And it
Were
was
you?
when I was having about 10 foot surgeries, one right after another. And I was up
Oh,
permanently around the clock on Demerol because the pain was so intense and so god awful. That was back in the 90s, and there was no like concept of opioid addiction or anything like that. And
right,
I got to the point where I was taking the Demerol so I would feel normal, that I would
right,
just feel like my old self, not to fight the pain, because I think the
right.
pain kind of went into the back of my head. I had to take it just to feel normal. And that's when it hit me. I think this is a problem. Like, this is
Okay,
definitely a problem. And then I got myself off of them, but that was through no help from any doctor at all. And that was only me recognizing that, Meg, you're taking this pill for the wrong thing, and
right.
so I have such a fear myself of pain medicine because of that.
Oof.
Yeah,
Yes,
really. I
indeed.
mean, when you need them, you need them, but boy, oh boy, you have to have such a healthy respect for them because
You really do.
slippery slope. But go ahead.
So, mostly neuropathic pain meds are anti-seizure meds. So,
Yes.
gabapentin is
Gabapentin.
one.
Yep.
Yes, Neurontin. So, there's a whole plethora of medications that were very, very helpful for me. And it's
Oh,
trial and error with that as
yes.
well. Sometimes the side effect profile is so significant that you
That you
just
can't do
can't.
it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, when I just went to the docs in the last 2 weeks, they go through my list of allergies, and
Yeah.
most of them are anti-seizure meds
Right.
because blurry vision and all the symptoms that go
Yes.
along with things. So medications for sure, but I had to use a lot of compounding medications that they would send the script to Florida where they could compound it and then send the medications back. But it actually included gabapentin and Valium and things to help the muscle
I've
spasms.
heard
And
of that. And that
mm,
really helps a great deal, doesn't it?
very helpful. So I think there were 6 medications in there, including ketamine in some of my scripts, which was very, very helpful.
I heard of that as well. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the nerve pain. And it's compounding
Yes,
because it has to be made in a lab. You can't like go to your CVS and
correct.
okay. Yeah, another woman who has nerve pain from having had a
Okay.
stroke, she's on that same type of cocktail of, and she
Oh,
gets
she
it made for
is.
her. Yeah, and when she just told me about it, I was like, I was never told about that. Now that I'm into the
Right.
world of nerve pain, that's something to consider for myself at some point.
Oh,
I need to.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
And you
sorry.
keep your mind open. And I think
Yes.
one of the most helpful things is to actually be associated with a pain clinic instead of because a
Yes.
lot of primary cares don't understand the whole chronic pain, which is another frustration, and it's
Yes.
too hard for them. So a pain
Yeah,
clinic, I would say, is number one where they see things
I agree with
more
you.
commonly than we do.
And it's really a crime that I was just referred to a pain clinic in the last 2 years. Have had it for 45
Oh,
years, this condition, and was never told to go to a pain. I didn't even know there were pain therapists. I didn't know there were
oh my
pain
goodness.
specialists. I had no idea. So, and that's one of the areas that I've gotten the most relief from is seeing a pain
Okay.
psychologist and also seeing pain specialists. And that's where I got a lot of help.
And I don't know if the pain psychologists are covered by most people's insurance. I've had to pay out of pocket for
Have
mine
you?
because yes, but it's so worth it. The
Yeah,
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, like if I got into
yes.
a couple pain groups and
Good.
support groups just to really feel connected and feel like I'm not alone
That's
because
great.
you get caught up in that whole
Yeah.
scenario as well.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And that's a big part of this podcast is to feel that connection and to help people
Yes.
like relate to something we're saying and people that don't have a disability or chronic pain to also somehow relate to what we're saying. I think that's so important.
Yes, if
Yeah.
they have a loved one so that they hear it
Yes.
and
Yeah.
accept it.
Do you know, I was looking up some different
Let me just
things
shift a little bit here.
that, yeah, sure. What they're actually studying right now is they have a big grant going on down at John Hopkins that's studying electrical current. And they're studying the difference between direct current and alternating current. And what they're doing is they're
Oh,
applying that then to the nerves. It's kind of like when you have a stimulator or, one of these neuromodulation type of, which you talk about. And it's basically they're trying to really understand how does that actually work and how does that change the way the brain perceives pain. And so they're doing
okay.
it was several millions of dollars worth of a grant that was given. And that's going to change the way that they come to understand. For instance, they do know that they're saying now that it's better to have is it direct current rather than alternating current. And not being a
Oh,
scientist at all, I don't really understand it, but it's great that they now see that that is better than having the other type, the alternating current. So that gave me a little bit of hope, saying if they're investigating that, there'll be better equipment to work with the nerves to decrease the pain.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
this is another thing I heard about, that they're doing targeted brain therapy with an ultrasound. They're actually going into the insula area of the brain, and they're
Oh,
actually doing an ultrasound in that area, different times, different lengths, and they're really seeing some great results with that, because that's one of the biggest pain regulators, I guess, that area of the brain.
yes,
So
yes.
that's the newest bit of research as
I
well. Is
did see a
so
special on that. Might have been a documentary, but I did see something about that, and I love that
fascinating.
they
Yeah.
are, yes, that they are studying it. And
Because they know they
creates
have to
hope.
get creates hope, and they have to get away from the opioids. And sadly, people that were dependent on them have been taken
Yes,
off of them. They have nothing they can be on, and they're dying. They're dying in pain, and we've done them a
yes,
disservice.
I
So,
agree.
so what alternate therapies or holistic treatments have you tried that have they helped with your pain?
Yes. So I give the analogy, and I'll answer you directly in a second, but I like the
Sure.
analogy of a glass of water, like you're
Oh,
holding.
yeah.
And if I can do anything to keep the water from overflowing out of my glass,
Yeah.
it's very helpful for me. So I have a wide variety of things that I do,
Just
but
perfect.
acupuncture, yes. So acupuncture is one, dry needling, all along where the sacral nerves innervate for me,
Oh,
like your inner thighs
yeah.
are really helpful down on the calves, things that you wouldn't think are directly
What is
related.
dry needling? I don't even know what that is,
Oh,
Kelly.
okay. So
Yeah.
it's a physical therapy practice,
Mm,
and it's different than acupuncture. So acupuncture will open up your meridians per se.
yes.
Dry needling goes a little bit not as deep, and it will get rid of little muscle twitches.
Oh, wow.
And for me, the biggest thing for me to understand was that the nerves control the muscles. And if your muscles are in spasm, like
Yeah.
tight,
Yes.
always tight, the
Yeah.
nerves just control that. So you
On,
have
on,
to
on.
get
Yeah.
on, and that whole fight or flight thing that I think
Yeah.
we've already touched on a little bit. But
Yeah.
so the dry needling will help some of the muscle spasms, which has been really helpful for me.
Gosh, yeah. Do you do
Mm,
that with a physical therapist,
I
or even?
do.
Okay,
Yes, I
interesting.
do it with,
Okay.
so pelvic therapy does it a lot, but now physical therapy is incorporating that into their treatment plan. So it's
Oh,
absolutely a godsend for me. So that's good. And then I have a shaman that I see. So I am open to herbs and plant therapy and anything to get me off of heavy
oh
duty
yeah,
medications. And we know there's a role for that everywhere. But if I can
definitely.
cut back
Yeah.
because of this, again, the side effect profile is a lot for me.
Yes. Like you
Uh,
said, just the littlest, if you can just make the littlest bit of difference in that cup of water and in your
yeah.
body, it's worth it. It's even diet or exercise or the
Oh,
right.
well,
Yeah.
yes. I
Yeah.
think my sister Mary, she's the first one that educated me and said, food is medicine, Kelly. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry.
What? Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
nurse. What?
Huh? Yeah.
But the food that we
Yeah.
do bring into our body is so helpful in decreasing
Right.
stress and antioxidants. And
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
other ones, just to go back to your direct question, was I love to meditate and to have a spiritual practice as well. So I minimally meditate twice a day. First thing in
I'm
the
so
morning
impressed with that.
and
Yeah.
last thing at night. Well, I have to. And then when things get flared even more, I put myself on the yoga mat. I just do a little gentle stretching
And
and put on a meditation.
that's awesome.
And yeah,
I
it's been
I
really helpful.
tell the name of, because I want you to share that, because you shared it with me and I've been
Absolutely.
using it. Yeah.
Okay. So it's called Insight Timer, and it's a free app that you can download, and you don't have to pay for it. If you'd like to donate at some point, you can. But every day that you click on, it'll tell you how many people around the world have already meditated. So yesterday was 866,000. When
That right
I
there makes
started,
you feel like you're part of a team.
it
Like that's
does.
so comforting.
It
Yeah.
does, Meg. When I first
Yeah.
started, it's like 60,000 people are meditating with me
Oh,
today.
I'm in the
That's
crowd here.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
I
it
don't
is. It
feel
gives you that
alone.
little hug.
It
It
does.
gives you a
It's
little
like a
hug.
group hug.
It
Yeah.
really is. It
Yeah.
really is. So now to see it's up in the 800,000s, it's just amazing.
I couldn't believe it. And like
Yeah.
when you had described it to me, I thought, well, I'll give it a try, because Kelly said it really helps her. And I am open to a lot of different things. I always feel you got to try something that's working for somebody else. And the
Right.
first day I tried it, it was the most beautiful. It was an Irish nun's prayer. And
You're
it was
kidding.
I am not kidding. And I
So
don't know
apropos for
why.
us.
I know. Having had two nuns in the family, like I'm like, what do they know about me? No, I have two nuns in the family, but it was so hysterical because it was things about you could picture some crabby little nun saying about, oh, let me keep my thoughts to myself and let me not be so crabby. And it was so like heart, like felt and so real. I was like, yeah, I could get on board with this. This is so down to earth. So I found it
Yes.
to be right what I needed. So thank you. Really
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Good. And you'll see the ones that you like. You can put a little heart so that you can keep them in your library.
Yeah.
I tend to be a little bit more spontaneous and see which one feels the best at the moment. But there's a
Yeah.
few that I follow all the time now.
It really is amazing. And you can do it for as little, I think it was 5 minutes I did it for. And so they were such small intervals, which was
Yes.
great for a beginner like myself. It's very, very manageable.
That's,
And there is something very pride worthy about saying I meditated today. Like I just feel like I am a badass and I meditated today because I have never been able to say that because I am like ADD if nothing else. So this is
mm.
just makes me feel very proud of myself. I meditated. So I'm going to keep it up. Yes.
Good, good. For
Yeah.
me, it just like lowers my shoulders down away from my ears. So
Yeah.
even if I'm in the car, I'll just put it on through my speaker on the and just like it's grounding. It's
Yes.
grounding. And
Put
I
you in
think
a nice
sometimes
zone.
we can spin out with our thoughts and
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
they're not always kind, those thoughts that we
they're
have.
not always
Oh,
kind.
yeah. They're
Yeah.
really not a good hug. They're kind of that annoying roommate that never shuts up.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
never does. Well, you sound like you have a lot of good tools in your toolbox. And I think it is really about having a toolbox and having
Mhm.
lots of things you can try and pick out depending on the day and depending on the mood you're in,
Right.
and knowing what's going to work. And then I'm sure there's times when you do have a flare that none of it works and you sort of just have to really sit in it and, get through it. Just somehow
Yeah.
get through it. Yeah.
Somehow get through it. And
Yeah.
not beat yourself up because that's another whole cycle that,
That
you
really
know,
is.
yeah. So
Yeah.
know that tomorrow's going to be another day. And if you get more
Yeah.
activity done,
Because,
that'll be okay.
I remember reading somewhere that really pain is meant to protect us, and pain is because your body is really cares about you and loves you. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, oh, that's a crock of shit. But then when the more I thought about it, the more I realized that is true because people who don't feel pain die much earlier, have a very unsafe life because they can't feel when something's hurting to pull back. They have their arm in the fire
Oh,
and they can't feel anything. They die so much younger than other people. It's a very small percentage that have that. And I used to think, God, I wish I had that. But you don't. I mean, pain really
right.
is a fantastic mechanism to get us to, pay attention to our bodies and to get us to stop and listen to it. And I always tell people when they're recovering from surgery, don't think those pain meds are going to get rid of your pain. You have to feel some pain. The goal is not to feel no pain because if you feel no pain, you will do too much and you will damage the surgery. So
Yes.
with us and our bodies and the way our bodies are, wired and what's going on with our bodies and our immune system and our pain is it's really trying to protect us. And sadly, it's sometimes overprotective and it's on like
Right.
a freight train. But I remember my therapist, one of the things he talked about with me one time is making my peace with my arthritis is it is not your enemy. It thinks it's protecting you. It thinks there's an army of invaders in your joints taking over, and
Wow.
it is doing everything it can to get rid of that army of invaders. And it's
That's
constantly doing
such
that.
a great
Yeah,
metaphor.
it helps me so much. And it helps me realize
Mm.
that I used to think my body has failed me and it's just the worst body ever. And then I made that whole total 360 where I realized like your body is so protective and is trying to be caring and loving that it thinks it's doing
Mm.
the right thing.
Right.
So just sometimes having that empathy for your body and yet you hate the way it makes you feel at times, but keeping that anger inside at your body and your immune system and that is only going to make things worse, when
Right.
you think about it
Right.
that way. So that
Yeah,
has
it's a
helped me
really
a
great
lot.
point.
All right. One thing that has always hit me over the years, and it hits me again and again, is that chronic pain is a slow death. It's like a chipping away of parts of yourself. Most of the parts that you loved and that you enjoyed, your physicality, your ability to cycle, your ability to run, all those types of things. Can you tell us about some of the parts that you have lost from this pain, this
Oof.
condition?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the athleticism and the body in motion is was huge for me, and I thought that was the biggest thing. And then as the years go on, you're like, oh, relationships,
Yeah.
feeling guilty or bad if you can't carry on with a commitment that you
Yeah.
potentially made because you're in a pain flare.
Yeah.
Making yourself vulnerable, Megan. I think we have touched on that, but that's probably my
Yeah.
biggest challenge, like being honest and open with those that are closest to you, and
Yeah.
accepting the fact that you can't do everything that you once did,
Right.
but
Right.
also the feeling of maybe you're going to disappoint
Oh God, we're people
those because
pleasers.
I mean,
Yes.
a big time people pleaser.
Me too.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you want to do what you used to be able to do. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be a grandmother, drive an hour and a half, and be on with
Yeah.
three beautiful little
Oh
grandchildren.
my God. Yeah.
And I don't always want to say it, but I have to say it. And that's been,
It's hard.
it's hard, but you have to acknowledge and you have to be aware what your limitations are. And I now have to make a plan B. Like, I'm
Yes.
going to say I'm going to do this. And if I can't do it, please understand. It's not
Yeah.
personal. It's just the phase that I'm in right now. That's taken me a long time and I'm still not really great at it.
Yeah. That is such a smart thing to do, to have a plan A, that if things are going great, the plan that we originally had is this, but to have a
Yes.
backup plan so that maybe I don't go from this wonderful day I was going to have to doing nothing. I could have maybe a little piece of that, or I could come up with something that still is going to make me happy that day. That's a great
Right,
idea. That's
right.
a great practice to have.
But it's
Yeah.
for others as well, because when I don't share with them, like,
Yeah.
oh, so we're going to the book club, or oh, we're going to go do this, and I can't go, and I feel like
Yes.
I'm letting them down. That's
Ugh.
what I think
Yeah.
many of us experience, like, oh, I let them down. Now I feel worse about myself. And so to have that in place and say it amongst my close people in my world,
Yeah.
it takes the pressure off.
It does.
Yes.
You go easy on yourself. You're gentler and kinder to yourself.
Yeah, I think some self-compassion there is
Yeah, which
helpful.
is vital. And I do think as a society and in general that it's kind of warped that we always feel like we have to justify our existence and our productivity, and
Yes.
just being alive and breathing and being here is not enough. We have to be so much more.
Yes.
And we've been brought up to be so much more. And we look at people that are celebrities or that are wealthy or that have gone on to change the world. And these are the people we admire and that we look up to. That's wonderful, but not every one of us can be that. Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes just existing and just getting up in the morning and getting dressed is enough.
I know.
And that's not something I do very easily either. I always feel like I should be doing more. I always feel like I can be doing more. And a lot of it is because of your type of personality, that you have this type A. You were a very
Yes.
successful nurse practitioner. You were successful in school. You were an athlete. You have all these things. So you've had a lifestyle of being successful. And then guess what? Success is redefined. It's a different,
Success is redefined. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it keeps redefining itself.
It does. It
Touching my
does.
toes used to be success and can't do it anymore. Okay, now, how has chronic pain impacted your family and friends? And also, what is the best way for them to offer their support?
Oh God, I love that question.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
they are going to love it too, because I think everybody needs that guidance, because nobody can guess, nobody knows. Yeah.
right. I think the best way for me to be more honest, and again, what we just discussed about being vulnerable, I think if someone ever said to me, Kelly, how would you like our visit to be when you
Oh,
come for a visit?
that's
And I'm like,
great.
or if they come to me, like, I have a king size bed and sometimes I have to visit on my bed or the couch. Would you like to lie down and watch a documentary?
Yeah.
Like, a wooden chair for me is, I look at that. I mean, I
Oh,
look at a
God.
bike and I'm like, I cannot sit there. I just like,
No.
so I get nervous and my eyes are always evaluating the room, like, oh, is my tush kush? Can I carry my tush kush into a public setting? Like all of those
Yes.
things. But that's what we do. We compensate in such a way. So
Yes.
I think it's really nice for friends or family to say, Mom or dear Kelly,
Yeah.
how would you like to plan this instead of, we're going to take a walk through the neighborhood and it's on a mountaintop. And I'm like, do
Yeah.
they think I can't incline anymore. Like a
It,
nice flat area
yeah.
is
Right.
lovely. Or would you like to
Yeah.
do this? And then we rest a little bit. So I think to ask your loved one that's in pain, like, what can they handle today is a really nice, like, how
I
are you
love
feeling
that.
today? And would you love to do this or this? And maybe give them a
Yeah.
choice. That for me
Yeah.
has been really helpful.
that has been, and I'm sure it's really helpful to your friends and your family members, like, because they don't want to not do things with you. They don't want to stop calling and inviting you places,
Right,
and because
right,
that's really lonely if that happens. So letting them know that this is what would work. This would work
right,
really well. That's really important. And I love
right.
how you said, what would you like your visit to look like, or what would you like it to be? That's very, very nice. It's a nice way to put it. So you're open to ideas. You're open to, hey, I would love to, do this or that, but this isn't one idea of what I know I can do today. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. Okay, this is one thing that I know everybody, or I think everybody with a chronic illness or chronic pain struggles with is asking for help. And some of it is because we're so sick of having to ask for help.
Hmm.
We want to be able to do it ourselves. And some things we think, I'm just going to try it, see how it goes. And usually for me, I might be able to physically do it at the time, but I'll pay for it like for days afterwards.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I'm not really great at anticipating that. I'm not very good at that. And the other thing is, sometimes I get impatient with, I'll ask my husband to do something and he hears me and he doesn't really say anything. And then I have to ask him again. And
Oh,
then he'll say, I heard you. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know you heard me. You didn't say anything. So it can be a very dicey topic and a very vulnerable. Again, it's that
very
vulnerability.
vulnerable. Hmm.
But the one thing that I learned and that I try to tell people, and I try to tell myself this too,
Hmm.
is when you ask somebody for help, I do believe you are giving them a gift. And I mean that in a way that you're allowing them into your pain, you're allowing them in to be part of your solution, and you allow them to help you. And that is a gift for them because there's
Mm.
so many times, Kelly, where they're dying to help you. They just don't know how, and they don't want
Right.
to embarrass you. They don't want to assume too much. So I try to take that mindset that, Meg, you're giving them a gift because if someone asks me for help, that's exactly how I feel. Don't you,
And
Kelly?
it's a
Like,
pleasure. It's a pleasure
yes,
to help someone else.
yeah, it
Yes.
really is. So I
Yeah.
find that helpful to
I
think
think it's great. It takes a level of acceptance, though,
it
to
does.
get to that point.
Yes.
And I think that was probably my biggest challenge. You seem very graceful about it. And I don't know how long your process was. For me,
Yeah.
whew,
It was long.
I'm better. I'm
Yeah.
better, Meg, but
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
It's definitely and I find I get some days I'm really good at it, some weeks I'm really good at, and other times I'm just like, oh God, if I have to ask for help one more damn time, I'm gonna scream. I just won't do it. I just won't do it because
I
so
sometimes don't either.
yeah,
And I'm like, why don't they get it? Why don't they
yes,
know? So
I
that
know.
miscommunication cycle is,
Yeah, it's tough. This one I think is a really good question. What is an expression about chronic pain or a saying that people, say about suffering or being ill that drives you crazy and you just want to say, don't ever say that to me?
I love when people say, oh my God, you look great. You must not be in any pain. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
All right. Yeah.
okay, okay. So
If
it's
only you could see.
invisible. It's
Yes.
like you
Yeah.
want to go into your whole spiel, and
Yeah.
um, that's not really helpful. And I've done it myself with other people that have pain because you hear their story, and I'm expecting maybe someone a little bit more debilitated,
Yes.
and you heard they lost 20 pounds in their pain, and I see them and I hug them and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you look at me. I do it. So of course,
I know
why
because you
wouldn't
do
other
mean
well-meaning people?
you mean it.
Yes.
You're well-meaning when you say it because I have to tell you, even though, I feel like I'm in pain, it is nice to hear that I still look nice. That's kind of how you mean it. Now, depends on
Right.
your frame of mind when someone says it to you and how they say it, like in that,
Yes.
well, you look great. Like,
Right.
that's
With an attitude.
with an
That's
attitude.
not so, yeah, that's
Yeah.
not so helpful.
No, that's a good one. I hate that. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yes. So I have a placard. I've been on Social Security disability. And so I have a placard in my car. And,
Mm,
I've been yelled at by people. And I
yes.
did hear when you did your segment with Maria and she was
Oh,
interviewing you and how you handled that beautiful example in front of your children.
oh,
I
that
was
was
with my son at Stanford Hospital having a very special testing diagnostic thing done. And I parked in the handicap zone and a woman yelled at me.
oh my
She
God.
asked me, screaming at me, how old are you? I can't believe you're in this spot. And I'm like,
Oh my Lord.
wow. Yeah. So those types of things where when it's invisible and people don't know. So I don't necessarily like that. I have lots of
I,
those stories.
I do not
Yeah.
like that at all. And I think that's a
Yeah.
lesson that people need to learn. If you have the handicap placard, yes, there are going to be people that cheat the system and use it, but you know what? It's not worth it. Don't point it out to somebody. They've got the placard legally, they can park there. Don't ask them to
Right.
justify it. Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
And assume
Yes, and
anything.
assume. I think one thing I know is that people turn pain into a competition. Well, at least you don't have cancer,
Oh,
or you
exactly.
can use your legs. Oh God. Yeah,
Yeah. Some well-meaning people will
right.
say, well, my coworker, she has cancer and she's still going to work, Kelly. Why aren't you
Oh
working?
my God, I know.
You were able to
Jesus.
go on vacation. Why could you go on vacation? And well, so
It's
it's just a misunderstanding and it's
yes,
so hurtful though.
it's so hurtful.
It's very hurtful.
It
And
hits at your core. It just rips you apart. It really does.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think people don't know. For me, I use the sports metaphor of pre-gaming and post-gaming. Like
I loved
I have
that.
to ice, I have to take medication, I have to lay down, I can't do a lot of activity the day before I travel. Like
Right.
there's all these things that are behind the scenes that nobody
Absolutely.
really knows about.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you have to pack in a certain way so that your bag's not too heavy and that so you can get from place A to place B a little bit easier. I have to get to the airport so much earlier,
Right.
and I find too when I do get to the airport, I have to take a wheelchair to right up
Oh, I do too.
to the
I
gate.
do too.
And
Yeah.
I get a lot of really nasty looks from that. Of course, people not
Yes.
believing that. And I realized that pain and getting people to see your pain is not, I'm always putting my hands up like this so they can see my hands. I'm realizing that I'm performing for them, that pain
Wow.
has a bit of a performative aspect so that
Okay.
the others around you can kind of like feel comfortable and it's so unnecessary. Like, why should we have to justify that? But I find that's really a sad thing with pain. It does have a performative piece to it where I walk like hunched over, I go slower. When I get out of the wheelchair, I want to look like I'm frail and I'm disabled because I don't want people thinking the worst of me,
Right. The judgment.
the judgment. And that's so sad that I actually have to think like that and that you have to think like that because you look amazing. Like like we're just saying, you look amazing, but like at least I have my hands, which I can like, and that is what I do because that's right away. It's like, oh God, what's going on there?
Mm,
But you not having that, that's a whole other element of screwed up and like the whole mental aspect of this and the whole anguish that you go through. And then when you're
right.
on the flight, I know I do this too. When I'm on the flight, the people that saw me get wheeled in are wondering, well, how's she walk into the bathroom?
Right.
And
Exactly.
she's out of that bathroom kind of quick. And I mean, and this is probably crap that they might not even be thinking that, but it
I
doesn't matter
know.
because I'm thinking it.
Exactly. I've
Yeah.
never heard the word the performative. That's really, and do you think, Meg, that that's an innate thing that happens in some of us?
Absolutely. And it goes all the way back to our childhood, being a people
Okay.
pleaser. It goes
Okay.
back to having to justify our existence, having
Mm,
to be the label that they're seeing. Like
right.
to us, being in pain means you are crunched over, you look deformed, you have a visible disability. And I know better than that, and I still fall right into that because it
Wow, that's
makes
such a
other people.
big,
Yeah.
that's something to be explored even more. Thank you for sharing
Deeper at
that.
that one. Yeah,
Yes,
we can get that
I'm going
scab.
to take some
Yeah,
notes.
yes.
Exactly.
But it's interesting as I realized that in the last probably year since I've been traveling and how I become a whole different persona as I'm in that wheelchair. I get this like I deflate and I become this. In other words, I can't be a presence and be my vivacious self. I must belittle myself so that I feel okay, justified taking that
Wow.
wheelchair. And it's just and I've had people say when they've been driving me somewhere and I have the handicap placard, I'll say, oh, there's a handicap spot. And they go, oh, well, you know what? Somebody else probably needs that. Let's just find, oh, there's a spot a little over there that's just close enough. And that reinforces that whole concept of it's a
Exactly.
competition. So
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, think about that and just observe yourself in situations. And I was ashamed of how much I was doing it because it just
Mm.
made other people feel comfortable. And then therefore I didn't have to feel like they were looking at me and judging me. So
Yeah, but that's chipping away what you said earlier. It's chipping away at our
yep.
own
Yeah.
essence.
Exactly. Until we can be our authentic selves, we are not
Yes.
living our life to the fullest and we're not being who we're supposed to be. And who we're supposed to be is these people that have these terrible chronic pain issues. And
Mhm.
there's a harshness to that. And there's also a beauty in the person you are because of that. You're a different person because of that.
Yes.
Not that
Yes.
I would wish it on anybody, but I also like who I am. So it's kind of that, and I don't know, it's really a tough one. I struggle with that.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
you're a rock star right now because you're taking it to the next level, which I don't know
Thank
how many
you.
people are able to move into advocacy and help others
Yeah.
and make the awareness.
Oh,
My hat
thank
is
you,
off to
Kelly.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's
I
true.
find my life is better when I take on a problem that's bigger than myself. I
Yes.
take on something that this is small compared to, what I could be doing for others. And if I can focus on that, suddenly I don't stay inside my head and my
Right.
story isn't as depressing and sickening and I don't get as sick as myself. So it's kind of selfish.
That's okay. You're doing
Yeah,
a good thing for the
that's
rest of the
okay.
world.
That is okay. What keeps you motivated or helps you get through the day? I loved your answers to these. I thought these were just wonderful, and I'm going to try to incorporate them in my life. So tell us about those.
Okay. So I do try this, and I've done it with my children, even when they were young. Like, let's find three things that we're grateful for
I love
today.
that.
And
Yeah.
so, if I, on some tough days, if I'm honest, I can only come up with one
Yes.
instead of the three. And I try
Yes.
not to grit my teeth and things like that. And we're being honest and authentic here, but I do
Yes.
try to remain grateful every day. And I try to
Yeah.
find the blessings that are in our life.
So
I did
important.
get, when I am struggling and I'm in a flare of whatever sort, I say to myself, slow it down and do one thing today, just one,
I love
and see
that.
how you do.
Good. I just want to really sit here and tell you that is so good because to me, I'm always trying to fill my day constantly with things and
Yeah,
it ends up hurting me. So I just love the fact that you say, I'm going to do one thing,
one thing.
one thing.
And that's a
That's,
tough day. And then if it's not such a tough day, I try to do one thing in the morning and one thing in the afternoon. And that just has to be enough, whether it's
yeah,
cooking my dinner. And I
that's
try to do
awesome.
that in the morning because the pain is worse for me in the evening. So I try to do some of my, you bunch things and you figure that out, whether it's innate or
Yeah.
by lessons by fire. But I
Yeah.
know when I feel the best and I know I can prep food and if I want to eat healthy. I think the other thing I did for myself was to get a little dog because it was easy for me to stay in the fetal position on a bad
Yeah.
day. And so I
Yeah.
would have to get up and go outside and take him for a walk. And
Force you out. Yeah.
he's been with me for over 13 years now.
I'm
And
so happy.
yeah, he's a little therapeutic
I
service
saw
animal.
the
But
picture. He's
for me,
adorable.
thank you.
Yes.
And for me, that's what I needed to do. And everyone will have their own, I'm sure,
Yes.
things to help stay motivated. But
I love that idea of a small dog too, because a small dog, he's easy to pick up and they cuddle
yeah,
with you. Tell us the biggest lessons you've learned about yourself since this entire life-changing chronic pain began.
I think we sort of touched on this as far as the vulnerability, but
Yeah.
I feel for me, I've been very humbled,
Yeah.
very, very humbled.
Yeah. The girl
And
who could do everything.
I think when you start to acknowledge that you have to be vulnerable in order to have these continued
Yeah.
beautiful relationships, and instead of fake it till I make it attitude, which I've
Yes.
done probably the
Yeah.
first decade of being on disability and learning how to incorporate this into my life, to really make yourself vulnerable has
Yeah.
been, it's been a challenge. And like I
Yes.
said, humbling. And it's probably one of my best lessons is
I
to
agree.
acknowledge, and I don't really have to please I'm 60 now, Meg, and I don't
Yeah.
really have to please
So
everybody.
freeing.
It's more, it is freeing.
It's
It's
very
freeing.
freeing.
Hmm.
Yeah. I do
And to
believe
be
that.
authentic, to really be
Yes.
authentic with the feelings and the emotions and the level of, I used to be able to commit to this, and now I have to maybe say back to that plan
Yeah.
B and really,
Right.
really do it.
I think it's love what you're saying about the vulnerability. And I love what you're saying about, accepting that the plan B is what it's going to be. It's not going to be this other thing. I think it's really, really important that we let people see our flaws and see, and I'm saying flaws just because I can't think of better, the things that make us more human, the things
Mhm.
that, that I don't have it all together. I am so far from having it all together. Listen, guys, let's cut out the crap of having to brag about how great we're doing because that
Right.
doesn't do anything but alienate people. Like, let's be real about how we struggle. Let's be real about our imperfections and how
Yeah.
we have a hard time with different things because that's where you get to the guts of relationships, I think.
Yes.
That's where you
Yes.
meet people and you feel like, wow, this person is showing me their underbelly. Like they're literally showing me
Right.
how they actually make mistakes. And nothing's more
And that to me
appealing.
is disarming. And so
Yes.
then the other person can also be vulnerable if you
Yeah.
start to share that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And it does
Yeah.
allow them to open up.
And really, we're all much more alike than we are different. And I think if people can see that, it makes them feel like, wow, I'm really not as nutty as I thought, or I'm not as bad as I thought. Other people do that
Right.
too. And I think that is a gift you give people. Show the world who you are. Like you said, be authentic. Be the person
Hmm.
that admits when you make a mistake. Because
Right.
we are going to keep making them over and over again. And but that's what makes us human. And I think that's what makes people want to be with you is your
Absolutely.
humanity, you know. That's so much
And
more appealing.
the core values and what's
Yes.
important. And then you can share that.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, in the beginning of this chronic pain journey, what do you wish someone had told you, or what advice do you wish you were given? For those that are out there that are going to be hearing this, and we've both had this for quite some time now, so we might seem like we got our act together, but we don't,
Yes.
first of all. But second of all, what do you wish somebody had said to you from the beginning and that you had listened to make your journey a little bit easier?
So things that I think when someone's new at chronic pain,
Yeah.
I wish someone shared like A, you're going to have good days and bad days. Try
Yeah.
not to beat yourself up. Be gentle
Oh,
with yourself and
yes.
self-compassion. Like all of
Yes.
those things that we just discussed, like one
Yeah.
activity a day and don't feel bad about it and those type of
Yeah.
things. But what stood out for me, I had a treatment doctor, an OBGYN, who ended up doing my decompression surgery. And I was very direct with him. And I said, I'm not having this unless you let me talk to a patient who has had this done. And he said, Kelly, I can't do that. And I said, oh, you need to do this for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I won't
That's
call them,
good.
but please find one
Yeah.
patient that you can have call me.
Right.
And so it
That
happened to be
agrees
a
to it. Yeah.
physician in the Boston hospital setting, and she had the same diagnosis I did. And she talked to me about the surgery, but she gave me a few tips like, Kelly, I don't ever spend time even talking about this with my primary care
Oh, I don't
provider.
either.
Like, they will never
No.
understand it. It's a waste of you trying to educate them, you trying to get them to A, they don't have time. B, they don't
You
care.
don't need them to help you with this piece. Yeah.
It's a specialty.
It's a
And
specialty.
yeah, so save your
Absolutely.
energy. So
Yes.
that for me was really helpful.
That is
And I
very
think,
helpful.
yeah. And during that conversation with her, she shared a little bit about what she did at her work site. So she actually laid on a massage table because people in my situation have a very difficult time sitting. It's the most uncomfortable,
Yeah.
compresses the nerves. So they gave her a massage table with a hole in it, and she would keep her charts below the
That's
table. And she was able
wonderful.
to, they really accommodated her.
So
This is
creative.
2010.
Wow. That's
Today, I
awesome.
think it's, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what I wrote in my response to you was when I heard this and I asked my work to give me some accommodations, and they said, absolutely not. And they asked me, I just asked for a standing desk, not that hard.
Yeah.
They asked me to wait for a male physician to retire in a year. And I got to tell you,
Oh,
Meg,
Kelly.
you want to come out Philly scratching and
Yeah.
kicking and screaming. I saw red for the first time in my life. Like I
Yeah.
was infuriated
And that's
and
not even legal, I have to
horrified.
tell you. That's not even
I
legal
know.
what they did.
But
But
back in the
but
2010s, like no
yes.
one was really, and I
No.
tried, you're already sticking up for yourself in so
Yes.
many other
Oh,
areas of
you
your
can't.
life.
Yes. Again, you're
And
just
I'm
like,
like,
I can't do it.
broken. I felt broken,
Yes. And in fact,
demoralized,
you were
broken.
broken.
I would say is know what your rights are, know
Yes.
that you're going to have good and bad days, know that you can do as much as you can do. And then that humbling feeling again of going on
Yes.
disability and
Oh, yeah.
accepting help and all of those things. Like find your resources, find your people, find your resources,
Yeah.
educate yourself on what your diagnosis is and condition is, and don't
Yes.
stay alone. Don't isolate and
Don't
reach out.
isolate. And we are so blessed in so many ways that we have the internet. And I know it's bad for a lot of things, but the fact that we can do our own research, now you have to be careful where you look for the information,
Right.
but it gives us a starting point.
It
And it
does.
gets
I
you to a
agree.
point where you can, hey, this organization does this. I can contact them and they're a reputable
Right.
organization. So
Right.
I totally agree with you, being your own advocate and really
Mhm.
constantly researching and reading and figuring out, because there's going to be some things that your doctor's not going to recommend that you find that somebody else is doing, and
Right.
you recommend it to your doctor and he says, oh, sure, that sounds like a good idea. And you're like, hello, shouldn't you have
Right.
recommended that to me? But in a perfect world, that would be the case, but it's not.
Exactly.
Not.
Exactly. They're on their focus and they're doing it's a
There have
systems issue.
It
Yeah.
is. They have so many patients and they have so little time. And I wouldn't
Right.
want to be a doctor today because it really is kind of a job where it's in and out. You're a pill dispenser and you
I
slap you on the
know.
ass and send you on your way. So it is, yeah.
Don't slap my ass, Meg.
Yes. Oh God,
It's
no.
already
I
numb.
just I just thought of that. Like, holy God, that's
It's already
bad.
numb.
That's really bad. Yes, yes.
That's your sense of humor. That's your gift
Yes,
to the world.
yes, yes. But I really think that's good advice. Find your people, find your resources, connect with people. Don't shut everybody out. There's going to be people that you have to, they're just
Let go
taking,
of.
and they're like vampires. They're energy
Yes.
vampires. They suck the energy out of you. And they're the people that you have to get rid of. But there are people out there that are good people that want to help you. And it's the same with the medical community. There are really good doctors that want to help you.
Mm.
And there are really doctors, but there's going to be a dipshit in every medical class, like he might
There
get his
is.
degree, but he's not the
Right.
smartest. So
Right.
always do your research in that area as well. I think that's really good. Kelly, is there anything else that we haven't talked about? Yeah.
Then I think one last point,
Yeah.
because I am involved in another volunteer position, and one of the things that we say are principles of support, and one of them is don't ever judge anyone else's pain as less than your own.
Oh my
And
God.
for
That's so true.
me, whether that's on the physical level or
Yes.
whether it's on the mental, emotional, spiritual level, like
Oh yeah.
everybody is walking, and whether you're in the wheelchair,
Yeah.
no one's pain is less than my pain.
No, exactly. And it's so
It might be
relative.
more. It
It's
might be more.
exactly. It's
Yes.
And how you feel pain is so personal. You may be
Mhm.
describing a pain and somebody else can't even imagine what that pain is like, but this person feels a different type of pain. And
Right.
it's not a competition. One is not better than the other or more important than the other. It's still pain. And none of us get
Yes.
out of here without experiencing some kind of pain. And
Right.
we are all broken in some way, and there's different ways of handling it. And I think that's really a good thing to remember, because boy, doesn't that come back to bite you when you start to judge people? Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
one of the other things I wanted to comment on, Meg, before
Yeah.
we go is when I watched one of your previous sessions, you talked about all of our experiences that we have when our dear friends start to experience pain. We're going
Yes.
to bring our level of
Yes.
knowledge to
Yeah.
that. And whether it's the normal aging process or it could
Yes.
be an acute thing that might not last for months or
Right.
years, but we have all the tools in our toolbox now
Yeah.
to help those that we love. And that was very valuable for me to hear, because you're turning it and we're giving back.
We're giving back. And I think, my
Yeah.
God, if there's nothing else we can do with this
Hmm.
whole journey we've been through, teaching somebody else something or giving advice or giving back to somebody, that's the reason that I find in it. That's where I find the peace in this whole damn situation is, like, that's a gift to be able to
It
do
is a
that.
gift. It
And I
is.
and I really am excited to do that, because I'm excited to help other people like they've tried to help me over the years.
Thank you,
Oh,
Meg.
you're welcome. Thank you so much, Kelly, for all that amazing information. I learned a hell of a lot about you and about myself even. One thing I did forget to ask Kelly, and I can't believe I forgot to ask this, is the statement, if she could finish it for me, what doesn't kill me? I asked her later, and she texted over me the answers of makes me resilient and makes me authentic. I'd have to say I agree with her on that, and I like that. And with that, thank you again so much for listening to the podcast. See you next time.